She sat there bleeding, arms shattered, face cut open, surrounded by elite Navy SEALs who thought they knew everything about combat. But when the medic started questioning her training, what came out of her mouth made every single operator in that tent go completely silent. This is the story of Lieutenant Sarah Chen, the woman who proved that the deadliest warriors aren't always the ones you expect. If you love your mom and dad, hit that subscribe button right now and show some love to the incredible parents who raised you to be strong. The desert sun beat down mercilessly on Forward Operating Base Whiskey, a collection of prefabricated structures and canvas tents in the middle of nowhere, Afghanistan. The temperature hovered around 115 degrees, and the air was thick with dust that seemed to penetrate everything, no matter how tightly sealed. Inside the medical tent, the atmosphere was tense but controlled, the kind of organized chaos that comes from years of training and countless combat deployments. Lieutenant Sarah Chen sat on the examination table, her left arm in a makeshift sling, blood trickling from a gash above her right eye. Her uniform was torn and covered in dust and dried blood, some of it hers, most of it not. She hadn't said a word since she'd walked into the tent under her own power 15 minutes ago, declining the stretcher that had been offered. Her face was a mask of controlled calm, but her eyes told a different story, one of calculated assessment and barely contained intensity. The medical tent was filled with Navy SEALs from Team 6, all of them watching this Army lieutenant with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. They'd been briefed that she was some kind of intelligence officer attached to a local unit, but intelligence officers didn't usually come back from missions looking like they'd gone 10 rounds with a grizzly bear. The SEALs had seen plenty of combat, had treated countless wounded soldiers, but there was something different about this woman, something that made them pause and pay attention. Petty Officer First Class Marcus Reynolds, the team's senior medic, approached her with his medical kit. Reynolds was a 12-year veteran, a man who'd seen more combat than most people could imagine, and he prided himself on being able to read people. He'd treated warlords and terrorists, generals and privates, and he could usually tell within seconds what kind of person he was dealing with. But this lieutenant, she was a puzzle. Her injuries were significant, the kind that should have had her screaming in pain or at least showing some sign of distress, but she sat there like she was waiting for a bus. Reynolds began his examination, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. The cut above her eye would need stitches, and her left arm was definitely broken, probably in at least 2 places from the way it hung. There were also numerous contusions and abrasions, signs of a serious fight. As he worked, he started talking, partly to distract her from the pain, partly because he was genuinely curious. "So, Lieutenant, what exactly happened out there?" Reynolds asked, his tone conversational but professional. "Your unit said you got separated during a firefight, but these injuries look like something more up close and personal." Sarah's eyes flicked to him briefly, then back to the middle distance. She didn't respond immediately, and Reynolds could see her jaw tighten slightly. He'd seen this before, soldiers processing trauma, trying to compartmentalize what they'd experienced. He gave her time, continuing his examination while waiting for her to open up. Finally, after what felt like an eternity but was probably only 30 seconds, Sarah spoke. Her voice was calm, measured, almost clinical. "Convoy was hit. IED took out the lead vehicle. Insurgents attacked from both sides. Got separated during the chaos. Had to fight my way to the rally point." Reynolds nodded, carefully probing her injured arm. She flinched slightly but made no sound. "That's about 5 clicks from where your convoy was hit. You covered 5 kilometers with a broken arm and got into multiple engagements along the way?" There was no accusation in his tone, just professional curiosity tinged with respect. "For engagements," Sarah said flatly. 2 singles, 1 pair, 1 group of 5. The tent went silent. Every SEAL in the space had stopped what they were doing and was now openly staring at the lieutenant. One of them, a tall Texan named Jake "Cowboy" Morrison, let out a low whistle. "You saying you dropped 12 hostiles on your own, injured, in enemy territory?" Sarah turned her head slowly to look at Morrison, her gaze steady and unwavering. 9. 3 got away. I don't miss when I'm at full capacity." Reynolds paused in his examination, his professional curiosity now fully engaged. "Lieutenant, no disrespect, but intelligence officers don't usually have that kind of combat training. What's your actual background? For the first time since she'd entered the tent, something flickered across Sarah's face. It might have been amusement, or maybe annoyance, it was hard to tell. She looked directly at Reynolds, and when she spoke, her voice carried a weight that made everyone in the tent lean in slightly. My actual background, Petty Officer Reynolds, is classified at a level that would require me to kill you all if I told you, and frankly, I'm too tired for that much paperwork. The corner of her mouth twitched slightly, the barest hint of a smile. But since you're going to be digging a bullet out of my shoulder in about 30 seconds, I suppose you deserve to know something. Reynolds's eyes widened slightly. You have a bullet wound? Where? He immediately began examining her more carefully, looking for an entry wound he'd missed. Left shoulder, posterior. Entry wound only, no exit. It's a ricochet, probably a fragment. Happened during the first engagement. Didn't want to mention it because I knew you'd make it a bigger deal than it is. Sarah shifted slightly, allowing Reynolds better access to her shoulder. Reynolds carefully cut away her uniform top, revealing a small but deep wound that had been bleeding slowly but steadily. The fact that she'd been sitting there for 15 minutes without mentioning a bullet wound spoke volumes about her pain tolerance and training. He immediately began prepping for extraction, his movements now more urgent but still controlled. Lieutenant Chen, Reynolds said, his tone now completely serious. That bullet is sitting very close to your brachial plexus. If it moves wrong, you could lose function in your entire arm. This isn't a field extraction anymore. We need to get you to the surgical unit. No, Sarah said firmly. Pull it out here. I've had worse. Besides, there are 3 casualties coming in from 2nd Platoon's patrol in about 10 minutes. They need that surgical unit more than I do. I checked the wound myself, it's stable. Just pull it and stitch me up. The chief of the SEAL team, a grizzled veteran named Master Chief Petty Officer Daniel Bull Sullivan, stepped forward. He'd been observing quietly from the corner, but now his interest was clearly piqued. Lieutenant, how did you know about 2nd Platoon's casualties? That call came in on a secure channel 2 minutes ago. Sarah looked at Sullivan with an expression that suggested she was debating how much to reveal. Finally, she sighed, a gesture that seemed to cost her considerable effort. Because I called it in, Master Chief. I was providing overwatch for their exfil when they got hit. Took out the machine gun nest that had them pinned down, then directed their escape route through my position before continuing to the rally point. The tent erupted in a mixture of shocked exclamations and rapid-fire questions. Sullivan held up his hand for silence, his eyes never leaving Sarah's face. You're telling me that you, with a broken arm, a bullet in your shoulder, and a head wound, provided precision sniper support for a SEAL extraction while evading enemy combatants in hostile territory? The head wound came after, Sarah clarified. One of the guys in the group of 5 got lucky with a rifle but before I could neutralize him. And technically, I was advancing to friendly lines, not evading. Evading implies running away. Her tone was matter-of-fact, as if she were describing a training exercise rather than a harrowing combat experience. Reynolds had begun the delicate process of extracting the bullet fragment, and Sarah sat perfectly still, her breathing controlled and steady despite what had to be excruciating pain. As he worked, Morrison moved closer, his skepticism now replaced with genuine curiosity. Ma'am, no offense, but we've been doing this for a long time, and what you're describing is expert-level combat operations. Where did an Army intelligence lieutenant learn to shoot like that? Morrison's question was blunt but not disrespectful. Sarah was quiet for a moment, her eyes unfocused as Reynolds worked on her shoulder. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter, more personal. My father was a Marine sniper in Vietnam. 2 tours. He started teaching me to shoot when I was 6 years old. By the time I was 12, I could hit a target at 1,000 yards. By 16, I was competing nationally. She paused as Reynolds extracted the bullet fragment, her face tightening slightly but still making no sound. When I was 18, I got recruited by a program that doesn't officially exist. Spent 3 years in training that made BUD/S look like summer camp. No offense to you gentlemen, your training is excellent, but it's designed to create teams. Mine was designed to create ghosts. The revelation hung in the air like a physical presence. Sullivan moved even closer, his expression a mixture of respect and concern. You're talking about a singleton program. Those are black book operations. If you're telling us this, Lieutenant, you're either breaking about 15 different security protocols, or something has changed. Something has changed, Sarah confirmed, her voice taking on a harder edge. 6 months ago, my entire unit was compromised. 12 operators, all of them burned by someone on the inside. I was the only one who survived because I was on a training rotation in Thailand when the hit went down. Since then, I've been operating under light cover as an intelligence officer while trying to figure out who sold us out. Reynolds had finished extracting the bullet and was now stitching the wound. He'd given her a local anesthetic, but she'd refused anything stronger, insisting she needed to stay alert. As he worked, he couldn't help but ask, so today, the convoy attack, that was targeting you specifically? Sarah nodded slightly. 3rd attempt in as many months. They're getting bolder, which means they're getting desperate. That's good, desperate people make mistakes. The insurgents who hit the convoy today weren't local Taliban. They were professional, probably former Spetsnaz or French Foreign Legion, mercenaries hired by whoever wants me dead. Morrison let out a low whistle. And you took down 9 of them by yourself. Damn, Lieutenant. You're either the luckiest person alive or the most dangerous. Luck had nothing to do with it, Sarah said flatly. The first 2 were easy, they were overconfident. The pair was trickier, they had good tactical sense, but they made the mistake of trying to flank me in an open area. The group of 5 was the problem. They were coordinated, well-trained, and they had me pinned down. That's when the broken arm became a real liability. How did you get out of that? Reynolds asked, now working on setting her arm. Improvisation and spite, Sarah replied, and this time there was definitely a hint of dark humor in her voice. I had 1 fragmentation grenade left and about 30 rounds of ammunition. I used the grenade to create a distraction, then moved position and picked them off one by one as they converged on where they thought I was. The last one got close enough to hit me with his rifle before I put him down. That's when I decided it was time to stop playing around and make for friendly lines. Sullivan crossed his arms, studying her with the intensity of someone reassessing a situation. Lieutenant Shin, I'm going to be straight with you. What you did today was beyond impressive. But you're also a massive security risk sitting in this tent right now. If you're right and someone on the inside is hunting you, then everyone around you is in danger. Sarah met his gaze steadily. I'm aware, Master Chief. That's why I'm telling you. I've kept this quiet for 6 months, operating solo, trying to protect everyone by staying isolated. But today changed things. Today they escalated. They were willing to take out an entire convoy of American soldiers just to get to me. That means the threat level has jumped, and I can't handle this alone anymore. What are you asking for? Sullivan's question was direct and to the point. I'm asking for help, Sarah said simply. I need people I can trust, people with the skills to watch my back while I hunt down whoever is responsible. I need operators who won't ask too many questions and won't report through official channels where the information might leak. Morrison laughed, but it was a sound of appreciation rather than mockery. Lady, you're basically asking if a bunch of SEALs want to go off book on an unauthorized counterintelligence operation that could end all our careers. Do you have any idea how many regulations that violates? About 73, by my count, Sarah responded. But I'm not asking you to violate regulations, Petty Officer Morrison. I'm asking you to help me complete a mission that's already been authorized. It's just been buried so deep that nobody knows about it except the people who want it to fail. Sullivan held up his hand again. Everyone out. Now. Except Reynolds, he needs to finish the medical work. The other SEALs filed out without argument, though their reluctance was obvious. Once they were alone, Sullivan pulled up a chair and sat down facing Sarah, his expression serious but not hostile. All right, Lieutenant. No audience now. Tell me the truth. All of it. Who authorized your mission? What are your actual objectives? And why should I risk my team on what sounds like a personal vendetta? Sarah took a deep breath, wincing as Reynolds finished setting her arm and began applying a cast. My mission was authorized by someone at JSOC whose name I don't know and whose face I've never seen. I receive orders through a dead drop system and report through encrypted channels that change weekly. My objective is simple: identify and eliminate a network of foreign operatives who have been systematically targeting American Special Operations personnel and selling their information to hostile actors. She paused, making sure she had Sullivan's full attention. This isn't about revenge, Master Chief, though I won't pretend that doesn't factor into my motivation. This is about stopping a threat that has already gotten 12 Americans killed and could get dozens more killed if left unchecked. The people I'm hunting have access to classified information at the highest levels. They know our procedures, our safe houses, our communication protocols. They're ghosts hunting ghosts, and until 6 months ago, they were winning. And now? Sullivan asked. Now I have a lead. The mercenaries who attacked the convoy today were hired through a broker in Dubai. I've been tracking him for 3 months. He's the key to the entire network. If I can get to him, I can trace the money back to whoever's running this operation. But he's heavily protected, and he's paranoid. I need a team that can help me get close enough to extract the information I need. Sullivan leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. This broker in Dubai, he have a name? Viktor Kozlov. Former KGB, turned private contractor after the Soviet Union fell. He's got connections in every major intelligence service and criminal organization from Moscow to Beijing. He's also notoriously careful. He survived at least 6 assassination attempts from various governments over the years. And you think you can get to him? There was skepticism in Sullivan's voice but also a grudging respect. I know I can, Sarah said with absolute certainty. Because 3 days from now, he's going to be in Karachi, Pakistan, attending a private auction for stolen military hardware. It's one of the few times he'll be outside his fortress in Dubai, and it's probably the only chance I'll get. But I can't go alone. I need backup, and I need people who know how to operate in a denied environment. Reynolds finished applying the cast and stepped back. For what it's worth, Master Chief, her injuries support her story. These aren't the wounds of someone who got lucky. This is someone who fought tactically and efficiently, even while injured. And her pain tolerance is off the charts. I've seen hardened operators crying with less severe wounds. Sullivan nodded slowly, then stood up. Lieutenant Shin, I'm going to have to make some calls. What you're describing is way above my pay grade. But I'll tell you this, if even half of what you've said is true, then you've earned the right to be heard. Give me 24 hours. In the meantime, you're confined to this base for your own protection. Is that acceptable? It's acceptable, Sarah agreed. But Master Chief, one more thing. The casualties from 2nd Platoon, how are they? Sullivan's expression softened slightly. They're stable, thanks in part to your covering fire. The corpsman said that machine gun nest would have chewed them up if someone hadn't taken it out when they did. You saved lives today, Lieutenant. Multiple lives. Sarah nodded, something like relief crossing her face. Good. That's good. Over the next 24 hours, Sarah remained in the medical tent, recovering from her injuries and preparing for whatever came next. The SEALs treated her with a mixture of curiosity and respect, bringing her food and checking on her periodically. Morrison in particular seemed fascinated by her story and spent several hours sitting with her, trading war stories and tactical theories. You know, Morrison said during one of these conversations, when I first saw you sitting there all shot up and silent, I figured you were just another officer who'd gotten in over their head. I've never been happier to be wrong about someone. Sarah smiled slightly, the first genuine smile anyone had seen from her. You know what they say, cowboy. Never judge a book by its cover. Or in this case, never judge a warrior by their rank insignia. Fair point, Morrison conceded. So this program you were part of, the one that doesn't officially exist. How many others were there like you? Sarah's smile faded. 12 of us. We operated independently, mostly, but we trained together. Formed bonds, you know. They weren't just teammates, they were family. When I got the call that they were gone, all of them, all at once, it was like losing my entire world. I've been running on rage and determination ever since. And now? Morrison asked gently. Now I'm going to finish what they started, Sarah said, her voice hard as steel. I'm going to find the people responsible, and I'm going to make sure they understand what happens when you target American operators. They wanted to create fear, I'm going to teach them what terror really means. Morrison nodded slowly. Well, if the Master Chief decides to greenlight this thing, you'll have plenty of backup for that. We SEALs take care of our own, and as far as I'm concerned, anyone who fights like you do is one of us. That evening, Sullivan returned to the medical tent with several other senior officers. They spent 3 hours behind closed doors with Sarah, going over every detail of her story, examining evidence, making calls to confirm what could be confirmed. When they finally emerged, Sullivan's expression was grim but determined. Lieutenant Chen, he said formally, after extensive consultation and verification, I've received authorization to provide direct support for your mission. Starting immediately, you'll be integrated with my team for the Dubai operation. We have 5 days to plan and prepare. Consider yourself temporarily assigned to SEAL Team 6 under my direct command. Sarah stood up, despite Reynolds's protests about her injuries. She came to attention as best she could with one arm in a cast and extended her good hand to Sullivan. Thank you, Master Chief. You won't regret this. Sullivan shook her hand firmly. I better not, Lieutenant. Because if this goes sideways, we're all going down together. But I've spent my entire career fighting for this country, and I'll be damned if I'm going to let some ghost network of traitors keep killing Americans without a fight. The next 5 days were a blur of activity. Despite her injuries, Sarah threw herself into the planning process, bringing a level of detailed intelligence and tactical acumen that impressed even the seasoned SEALs. She knew Kozlov's habits, his security protocols, his vulnerabilities. She'd been studying him for months, and now she laid it all out for the team. The plan they developed was audacious and dangerous, but it was solid. They would infiltrate the auction in Karachi posing as buyers, get close to Kozlov, and extract him to a secure location where Sarah could interrogate him. If things went according to plan, they'd be in and out before anyone knew what happened. If things went wrong, well, that's what SEALs trained for. On the day of the mission, as they prepared to board the helicopter that would take them to Pakistan, Morrison pulled Sarah aside. Hey Lieutenant, I just want you to know, whatever happens out there, we've got your 6. You're one of us now. Sarah nodded, her expression serious but grateful. Thanks, cowboy. That means more than you know. The mission in Karachi was everything they'd trained for and nothing like they'd expected. Kozlov was there, just as Sarah had predicted, but he'd brought more security than anticipated. What should have been a quick extraction turned into a running firefight through the streets of Karachi, with the team fighting their way to the exfil point while protecting both Sarah and their prisoner. It was during this firefight that Sarah truly showed what she was capable of. Even with one arm in a cast, she moved with a grace and precision that left the SEALs in awe. She anticipated threats before they materialized, positioned herself perfectly for maximum effect, and made every shot count. It was like watching a master class in combat operations. They made it to the exfil point with minutes to spare, Kozlov in custody and the team intact, though several of them had picked up minor injuries along the way. As the helicopter lifted off from the rooftop, Morrison looked at Sarah and shook his head in amazement. I've been a SEAL for 8 years, he shouted over the noise of the rotors. I've served with some of the best warriors in the world. But I have never seen anyone fight like you do. You're not just good, Lieutenant. You're something else entirely. Sarah didn't respond, her attention focused on Kozlov, who sat restrained and glaring at her with undisguised hatred. She leaned in close, speaking just loud enough for him to hear over the helicopter noise. You're going to tell me everything, she said, her voice cold and controlled. Every name, every payment, every detail of the network. And you're going to do it because you're a survivor, Victor. You've survived 6 assassination attempts because you're smart enough to know when you're beaten. Well, you're beaten now. The only question is whether you survive this too. Kozlov stared at her for a long moment, then slowly nodded. You are like your father, he said in heavily accented English. He too was a warrior without mercy. I knew him, in Vietnam. He was the one who gave me this. He gestured to a scar on his face with his restrained hands. I respected him then. I respect you now. I will tell you what you want to know. The debriefing took 3 days. Kozlov, true to his word, provided everything: names, locations, payment records, communication protocols. The network was even larger than Sarah had suspected, spanning multiple countries and involving assets in at least 6 different intelligence services. But now she had it all, laid out in front of her like a map to justice. With the information Kozlov provided, a coordinated operation was launched. JSOC, working with the FBI and CIA, began rolling up the network. Arrests were made on 3 continents. Assets were seized. And slowly but surely, the organization that had killed Sarah's team began to crumble. 3 months after the mission in Karachi, Sarah stood in Arlington National Cemetery, looking at 12 new headstones. The official story was that her former teammates had died in a training accident, a cover that would likely never be lifted. But Sarah knew the truth, and now so did the people responsible, the ones who were spending the rest of their lives in black site prisons. Sullivan stood beside her, along with Morrison and several other members of the SEAL team. They'd become close over the past months, bonded by shared combat and mutual respect. They would have been proud, Sullivan said quietly. You finished what they started. We finished it, Sarah corrected. I couldn't have done it without you and your team. So what now? Morrison asked. You going back to the program? Sarah shook her head slowly. There is no program anymore. With the network gone, JSOC decided it was time to shut it down officially. I've been offered a position training the next generation of special operators. Teaching them what I've learned, making sure what happened to my team never happens again. Sounds boring, Morrison said with a grin. Maybe we could convince you to come on a few more operations with us first. We could use someone with your skills. Sarah smiled, the expression reaching her eyes for the first time in months. I think I'd like that, cowboy. I think I'd like that a lot. As they walked away from the cemetery, Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she'd been carrying for 6 long months. Her team had been avenged. The mission was complete. But more importantly, she'd found something she thought she'd lost forever, a new family, forged in combat and bound by trust. The sun was setting over Washington, D.C., painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Sarah looked back at the cemetery one last time, then squared her shoulders and moved forward. There was still work to be done, still enemies to fight, still lives to protect. But now she wouldn't be doing it alone. She was wounded but not broken. Silent but not defeated. And she had proven, beyond any doubt, that true warriors come in all forms. Sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one nobody sees coming. And Sarah Chen had spent her entire life being underestimated, right up until the moment she proved everyone wrong. The SEALs had learned that lesson in a medical tent in Afghanistan, and the world would learn it in the years to come as Sarah continued her work, training, fighting, and protecting. Because that's what warriors do. They endure. They adapt. They overcome. And they never, ever give up. So to everyone watching this video, from which part of the country are you watching this incredible story? Drop a comment below and let us know where you're from. We love hearing from our viewers across this great nation.